Caleb had a strong argument that Alabama should have made the college football playoff. We all know that they didn't now. You, however, were a bit in the minority, John. You argued strongly that South Carolina should have been the final team to make the college football playoff. I say this not insulting at all, but you're the only person that I've heard say that. So I wanted to explore that a bit because I do think it speaks to the overall depth of the SEC when you're talking about traditionally the 8th, 9th best program put together a team that was, at least in your mind, college football playoff worthy.
Well, yeah, it speaks to the balance of the SEC. Excuse me, there's not a super team in it, but I got quite a few good teams. Yeah, my reasoning, and when I voted in the top 25 poll regularly, I always went with full body of work, and I evaluated a win in September just as much as I did in November. I've changed a little bit in this particular case, and I think it has to do with the playoff with 12 teams in. It really bothered me that Alabama had everything laid out for it. It's right there. Just go get it. Just go up to Norman and do what everybody else does to Oklahoma. Beat it. Oklahoma has a rinky-dink offense, some really good players on defense, but it doesn't beat good teams. So go out there and win the game. And you not only lose, but you just go belly up. 24-3 to that Oklahoma team, a 6-6 team. Are you kidding me? And now you want to complain about not getting the playoff, and you also lost to Vanderbilt, a 6-6 team. South Carolina has not lost to any team with a worse record than 8-4. And if you delve deeply into South Carolina's record, go back to the LSU game that it lost by 3 points, blew a 17-point lead. When its quarterback, Lenora Sellers, couldn't play in the second half because of injury. This college football selection committee makes such a big deal about quarterbacks. Ask Florida State about that. Well, he didn't play in the second half. There's no way LSU would have won that game if he'd have played. It just wouldn't have. They couldn't tackle the guy. So that's one loss. Then it loses to Alabama, a 2-point loss on the road in the SEC. Excuse me. Yeah, that's head-to-head. But, I mean, to me, that's I don't make a big deal out of that. A bad loss to Ole Miss on its home field, got hammered by Ole Miss. But Alabama has, to me, 2 really bad losses. That Oklahoma loss was bad. And I weigh it more because look what Clemson did. It's fighting to get in the playoffs. What does it do? And wins its last 6 games. And it goes to Clemson and beats a team that's in the playoff on its home field. You want to weigh that against SMU a week later, which couldn't beat Clemson on a neutral site? That's why I like South Carolina. And another factor, right now, when you put those teams in the playoff, who would I think have a better chance of winning a game would be South Carolina.
Okay, John. I understand your point, and if you talk about who's playing the best right now, I agree. But I do think with college football, you have to factor in overall resume. And Alabama's strength of schedule is higher. Their quality, by every metric that you could use, you could Google search any strength of schedule, Alabama's is higher. Their number of quality wins are higher. They beat South Carolina head-to-head. Both teams have the same record. I don't know how we can justify, outside of the fact that South Carolina is playing better right now, putting them over Alabama. And I'll just ask you this. You remember, just a quick throwback, because do you remember 2012 when Johnny Football went to Alabama and beat Alabama on the road that day? And we all remember that game.
Yeah, I remember him beating him. I don't really remember details about the game. It was a close
Well,
game.
Texas A&M had lost 2 of their first 3 and had won every game after that. If we were to apply your logic, we would have said that Texas A&M should be going to the national title game over Alabama that year because they were the hottest team and they had beaten Alabama. But Alabama won the SEC title that year. They ended up getting to play Notre Dame. So don't you have to factor in the overall resume, even if one team's better at the current moment?
Yeah, you have to factor it all in, but this is very subjective. And I would, again, this departs from the way I normally look at this and analyze it. It really bothered me. I've watched Alabama all year. Alabama has some really bad games. And if I'm thinking of, okay, if you're trying to pick the best teams in the 12 best teams, I'm looking at it through that lens. I just don't think it's Alabama. I just think, yeah, it's got good wins, but it's got really bad losses. And so, but the thing that troubled me, and I would have picked out the Oklahoma game is the one that got me. If you
Me
can't
too.
take care of business going down the stretch, you don't deserve to be in the playoff. It's right there for you. Just beat a mediocre Oklahoma team.
You know, the other reason that one got me too is I felt like they got really outcoached and outmojoed. I felt like that Oklahoma used a lot of pulling guards, a lot of pulling tackles that they hadn't done previously. And it didn't look like, and I know what they've done at Washington, it didn't look like a championship sort of staff or reaction. I mean, what happens when Tennessee gets up on Alabama in Tuscaloosa 2 years ago? Alabama has adjustments at halftime. And we've seen other situations where Kirby Smart has had adjustments at halftime. That staff made that team look maybe even worse than it is because they just had no answer when Oklahoma started doing new stuff with a new coordinator.
Yeah, and considering Brent Venables' status there at Oklahoma right now, do
Thank
you
you.
really want that on your resume?
Well, now,
He got outfoxed by Brent Venable and company.
yeah, I thought you were going to say with Brent Venables there, should you ever get outfoxed defensively? No, you shouldn't. I mean, that should be his one thing where you go in and go, boys, all right, halftime did not go the way we wanted it to. We're going to make these changes and we're going to make them right now because I'm a defensive guru and I'm one of the best in the country. He didn't look like it in that game.
Well, I think here's the thing that really gets me about college football right now. And I go back to the olden days when you had 2 top 25 polls and people voted on who should be the national champion. There wasn't, you usually didn't have the top 2 teams playing in a bowl game. You just had a vote. And there was all this speculation and all this controversy and all this publicity about it. And here we are now, many years later, you got a 12-team playoff and you still got the same thing. All the speculation, all these arguments back and forth, all the publicity. A boxing promoter would dream of this kind of publicity.
Yes. And John, let me just throw this in there really quick, Caleb. It's exactly like cheating in baseball. It is a part of the game. And whether it's the greenies that they used to take in the 80s that were amphetamines, or whether it's the way you steal signs that are a part of the game I've umpired, or whether it's actually taking steroids, the cream in the clear, cheating just seems to be an accepted part of baseball. And the dialogue between who's better and who's worse and the constant controversy, that just seems to be at football's core, college football's core. And I don't think they ever want that to go away.
Apparently it's not, because I think some people thought, well, you expand the playoff field, then you won't have complaints. Everybody with the case that has a case that they belong in a playoff will be in there. No, it won't work out. You could go to a 2014 playoff and you're still kind of, well, the 2015, why aren't we in over Team X? You're always going to have that. And it's always going to just fuel publicity. That's what all the talk shows, podcasts, streaming shows, columnists are writing about. It's just a publicity machine.
And John, this is why it's funny. I'm the youngest one here, and I'm the most traditionalist. I never wanted the playoff because I said that it wouldn't solve the controversy. My solution was, you talk about how they just did the rankings. Funny enough, my solution back in the day before the 14 playoff, go back to the old bowl tie-ins and then just do a +1. Just take the top 2 teams after the bowl games and have them go play in a national title. I never thought there was more than 3 teams deserving of vying for it anyway. Can we compromise on this playoff, though, between South Carolina and Alabama? Okay, I think I am the Henry Clay of the show. John Adams was around when Henry
Clay, one of my favorite historical figures. Go ahead.
Yes, I am going to come and split the baby and compromise. How about the fact that both South Carolina and Alabama should be in over both SMU and Indiana?
John? Then you got to put Ole Miss in too.
I can't kick out another team, but I think so.
Why not?
You're already kicking a couple out. I mean, Ole Miss would have a beef.
Ole Miss has the worst loss of all of them, though, with Kentucky. So,
well, that probably should be a stipulation with the committee. If you lose to Kentucky, then you can't be in the playoff. It doesn't matter what else you do. You're out.
Talking to somebody that in September said, if Indiana's in this thing, we just need to blow the whole damn thing up. And look where I am now.
Well, I tell you
they
what.
They don't belong in. They have no business being in.
Well, but they're in.
But they're in. I tell you what, you also could look at Notre Dame. I don't think Notre Dame belongs in. Everybody else is in a conference, and you say, oh, yeah, well, if you impress us enough, you're Notre Dame, so you can play too. No, it has no business being in the playoff. And it lost to Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois wasn't even the best team in the MAC.
No, it was
that's a good point. I see Notre Dame at least can hang their hat. It's not a great win, but Texas A&M's an okay win. I mean, their best win is the same win that Texas's best win is.
Yeah, but I'm going to go back to what John said. I think that was a staff that's coming together, and that's why I factor more what I usually am as a whole resume thing. Yeah, I'm going to factor more what teams do late. It's why I would like Tennessee a little bit better because I think Nico's playing at a higher level. It's why I don't like Notre Dame as much because I think they beat an A&M team that was still finding its way.
Yeah, and let's let Connor Wigman throw another pass, okay?
It
hit the turf.
He entered.
Yeah,
he entered the portal and he said, "I'm looking to go play for a college football playoff." It's like you're the reason A&M's not playing for a college football playoff, bro.
No, you misinterpreted that, Caleb. He's looking for being in an FCS playoff, not FBS.
See, Caleb, I mean, sometimes athletes are tough to read, so I'm not blaming you.
Devil's in the details.
Yeah. Whole question is this: is college football playoff more about publicity or fairness? John's appearance brought to you by Newberg Collision Center.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert.
All right, John, given its current makeup, is the college football playoff more about publicity or fairness?
It's more about money. You can have
an option.
Answer C. I'm sorry, but it's more about money.
I got pub. We keep talking 85% of the vote. Fair. They got the best 12 teams, 15% of the vote.
But can I break a little bit? If they were about money, wouldn't they have put Alabama in over SMU or Indiana?
Okay, I would like to touch base on that for a second. I know we've got to move on, but I had no problem with Tennessee the college football playoff leaning towards a team with a bigger name and a bigger brand. I know Paul Feinbaum got lit up because of that, but I have no problem. And John, going back to your point, if the resumes were exactly equal between South Carolina and Alabama, I would go with the brand. I don't think the brand should have anything to do with it. I knew you wouldn't, but I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Oh, well, you did. You threw it out, and I hit it out of the park. Let's move on.
What about you on that, Caleb? Agree, disagree?
I don't think the brand should be part of it either, but I think Alabama should get in, not because of the brand. And where I was naive is I thought they would value brand, but they didn't. I mean, to their credit, I guess if you could say, they weren't thinking about money. They really did pick who they think are the 12 most deserving teams, because if they were thinking about money, there's no way they're putting SMU in over Alabama.
Yeah, think about it. What's Alabama known for? National championships. What's SMU known for? The death penalty.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What do you think?
That's also SMU's brand.
What would have been a bigger draw? Alabama playing Texas or SMU playing Texas? Alabama playing Texas. They didn't think about
may I throw in a quick Uncle Dave story before we move on? John, you'll appreciate this.
It's your show. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah. So because of weather, we had all kinds of trouble getting to Dallas for one of the mini Cotton Bowls. I can't remember which one it was, but it seems like they played in like 18 there for a while. And so I went down there and I'm covering the Tennessee practice, and I brought nothing but spring clothes because I think Dallas is warm all the time, right? It's 21 degrees. The winter, I mean, just the rush of wind, you can feel your bones. It's absolutely horrible. So I wanted somebody to feel worse than me. So our good buddy with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Mike Griffith, called and said, hey, my flight's still running late because of weather. I'm not there yet. And I said, I got it covered, but you're missing the best practice ever. They're actually letting us take part in practice and do some things and throw the ball around. And he cried on the telephone because he thought he was missing out on taking part in practice, which they'd never let us do, by the way.
Well, you don't know much about Dallas if you think it's warm in the winter. Gary Lundy, our former colleague and good friend, Gary slipped on ice going to the stadium. We missed the media bus. We were kind of late getting to one of those cotton balls, and we were trying to walk very gingerly and it was treacherous. And Gary went down, took one for the team.
Jimmy Himes slipped on that very same day, headed to the Cotton Bowl, and fell. He also slipped when we were headed to the Super Bowl one time.